Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of Tailgate Sermons. Today we are in John chapter 9, and we're going to be talking about the man that was born blind and Jesus healing him. And I've already been aggravated. I've got halfway through this a while ago, and then the thing quit, and it's one of them aggravating things. But oh well. Here we go. So Jesus and his disciples was walking, and they come up on this man that had been born blind. And so the disciples' question was, who sinned? His parents or him? Because he was born blind, so he couldn't have sinned in a womb. So why was he blind? Because back in that day, the culture, they taught any kind of suffering had to be a direct result from sin. Somebody had to sin to cause that suffering. So that's why they was asking, did his parents sin? And so Jesus answered him and he said that neither this man nor his parents sinned. This came about so that God's works might be displayed in him. So his suffering was so God could use it. It was made for this moment right here. Jesus used it to glorify God, glorify himself, that he healed him and people's going to believe. And what you can take just out of that couple of verses right there is your suffering's not always, because of sin. It's just because bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. And I've got a commentary I want to read to you right here. It's good to get into find you a good study Bible and just dig in. Read through this, what I've been going over. That's what I want you to do, just dig in and study it for yourself and see that God can take you through his word and just show you stuff that you'd never thought of before and open your eyes, just like he did for the blind man. But I'm going to read this commentary right here because I thought it was really good. It says, but Jesus used this man's suffering to teach about faith and to glorify God. We live in a fallen world where good behavior is not always rewarded and bad behavior is not always punished. Therefore, innocent people sometimes suffer. If God took suffering away whenever we ask, we would follow him for comfort and convenience, not out of love and devotion. So, regardless of what you're going through, Jesus can take you through it, and Jesus can be glorified through it. It can become a part of your testimony and help other people. But we're going to see 4 different responses to Jesus doing this in this chapter, and that's what I want to look at today. And one of the responses is the neighbors. So Jesus heals this guy. First, the way he heals him is kind of unique too. He said that after he said these things, he spit on the ground, made some mud from the saliva, and spread the mud on his eyes. So this guy, they come up on this guy. It don't say that he went looking for Jesus, he couldn't see. Jesus came up to him, and he was born blind, and so Jesus got a hold of him. And when Jesus gets a hold of you, things change. So Jesus gets a hold of him, spits in some dirt, makes mud in his hands, and rubs it in his eyes. And then he goes and tells him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he left, washed, and came back seeing. So, and with that right there, he spit in the dust and made mud out of it. And according to stuff I've read and studied, he made Adam from the dust of the ground. So he's like going back to the dust again, spitting in it, and it's like he's backing up and saying, let's fix this. Let me fix this, because only he can fix it. He's the one that made man, so he can fix man. It's like, the guy who built your motorcycle can probably fix your motorcycle when it tears up. But anyway, the neighbors, they seen this and they recognized him. And it says in verse 8, it says, his neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar said, isn't this the one who used to sit begging? Some said, he's the one. Others were saying, no, but it looks like him. And so he kept telling them, I am the one. I'm the one that was born blind. So they ask him, then how were your eyes opened? So he tells them, this man called Jesus, made some mud, wiped it in my eyes, and told me to go wash, and I received my sight. and asked, where is he? And he didn't know. I don't know where he's at. When I come back, he was gone. So next, that was the neighbors. They were surprised and kind of skeptical, because they'd seen him, thought, well, maybe it just looks like the guy. So they was kind of skeptical and surprised. So that was their response. The next response we're going to see is from the Pharisees. It says, they brought the man who used to be blind to the Pharisees. The day that Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes was a Sabbath, which was a no-no to the Pharisees. You didn't do nothing on the Sabbath. And making that mud, spitting in the dirt and making mud, that was work to them. So he broke the Sabbath. Then the Pharisees asked him again how he received his sight. So he's got to tell the whole story again. He spit in the ground, made some mud, put it on my eyes, told me to go wash. Now I can see. So some of the Pharisees said, this man's not from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath. And then others were saying, how can a sinful man perform such signs? And there was a division among them. So he's busting up the Pharisees too, because they're thinking, he's got to be him, the Messiah. And others were thinking, no, it can't be because he's breaking the Sabbath. And so they asked the blind man, what do you say about him since he opened your eyes? He said, he's a prophet. And the Jews didn't believe this about him, and that he had received his sight. So they called his parents. So that the Pharisees were, of course, prejudiced against Jesus. They hated Jesus. He couldn't have been the one that healed him. So they get his parents. This is the third reaction we're going to see. So his parents, they're kind of scared to death, and they ask him, is this your son? And they're like, yeah, that's our son, and he was blind, and now he can see. And they're wanting to know, well, how'd this happen? He said, well, ask him. He's of age. Don't ask us, but that is our son. He can see, and so ask him. Well, they was afraid. That was their response, because they didn't want to get kicked out of the synagogue. Because get kicked out of the synagogue in today's time, that would be like losing your citizenship, or losing your driver's license, privilege, whatever. That's bad. It'd be like they're kicking you out of the country. So they summoned him the second time. And they said, give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner. And he answered, whether or not he's a sinner, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, and now I can see. Boom, mic drop. That's his response. So we seen the neighbors that was surprised. We seen the Pharisees, of course, who was prejudiced, and they didn't believe him. And then we seen the parents who were just scared of what the Pharisees were going to do to them. And then now we see his response. He didn't care what nobody done. He was blind, and now he can see. And so they asked him, what did he do to you? How did you open your eyes? And his response was, I already told you, and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Why do you want to hear it again? You don't want to become his disciples too, do you? So he gets a little sarcastic with them, Are you wanting to sign up for Team Jesus? So they ridiculed him and they throwed him out. Boom, you're out of here. So he gets kicked out of the temple. Well, verse 35 says, Jesus heard that they had thrown the man out, and when he had found him, he asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? He asked. Because he hadn't seen Jesus. Jesus healed him, and when he come back, Jesus was gone. So this is the first time he sees him. Jesus answered him, you have seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Verse 38 says, I believe, Lord, he said, and he worshiped him. So there's a few things there. Blindness. The Pharisees are spiritually blind. They don't want to see him, and they're not going to believe because they're just stubborn and stupid. But he changed this man's life, and not only did he physically help him to see, but he spiritually helped him to see. And when we're in sin, before we become Christians, before Jesus gets a hold of us, we're spiritually blind. But when Jesus comes into your heart, and only Jesus can call you. And when he calls you and gets a hold of your heart, you got to make a choice. You got to turn it over to him, or you got to be like these Pharisees and hold on to it and say, I got this, when really you don't got this. But once Jesus gets a hold of your heart and you let him have his will and your way in your life, then you will no longer be spiritually blind. You will be able to see Jesus and all that he does and does for you. And like when he healed him on the Sabbath, Jesus was teaching them, even on the Sabbath, even on the day of rest, meet people's needs. You don't just go by and see somebody that's starving and say, I'll pray that you get something to eat. Feed them. Help them however you can. That's what Jesus would do. So I hope this encourages you today, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, rest of your week, and be back here next week, and we'll talk about chapter 10, which is the Good Shepherd. So hope to see you in church tomorrow. If you don't have your home church, we meet at Smoky Mountain Elementary School with the Peaks. I'd love to have you come join us. And remember, it's going to be hell without Jesus.